An Iranian anti-ship missile strikes a U.S. aircraft carrier, and the Persian Gulf becomes a war zone in 55 minutes flat. Sunday, 9:14 p.m., the Persian Gulf, 61 miles southwest of the Strait of Hormuz, the USS Gerald R. Ford, the most expensive warship ever built, $13.3 billion of steel, technology, and aviation capability, carrying 90 aircraft and 5,000 sailors, was conducting routine flight operations. F/A-18s recovering from a strike package. E-2D Hawkeyes cycling off the catapults. The flight deck, a choreographed chaos of arresting wires, jet blast deflectors, and yellow-shirted handlers moving aircraft with practiced precision. Below decks, 4,800 men and women were eating, sleeping, working, and waiting for the end of their watch. The Aegis cruiser, USS Lady Gulf, ran point defense 6 miles to the Ford's northwest. 2 destroyers on the formation's flanks. Standard carrier strike group geometry. Textbook. The kind of formation that had sailed these waters for 40 years without a peer-level threat testing it in live combat. At 9:14 p.m., that changed. The Iranian weapon that started the war was not a ballistic missile. It was not a drone swarm. It was a Khalij Fars, a modified Fateh 110 short-range ballistic missile, adapted with a radar seeker in its nose, redesignated as an anti-ship ballistic missile, and tested successfully against a stationary target vessel in the Gulf of Oman 18 months prior. Range, 300 kilometers. Terminal velocity, Mach 3.5 in the final phase of its trajectory, diving at a 70-degree angle from 15,000 meters altitude. The seeker locked onto the Ford's radar cross-section from 80 kilometers out and followed it to impact through the final 43 seconds of flight. The Aegis SPY-1 radar on USS Lady Gulf tracked it from launch. The tactical action officer had a firing solution computed before the missile reached peak altitude. He fired 2 SM-6 interceptors in standard salvo protocol. Both missed. The first SM-6 detonated 34 meters from the missile's body, close enough to shrapnel damage the seeker, but not close enough to destroy the warhead or the guidance system. The missile continued. The second SM-6 was fired 6.2 seconds after the first and approached from a different vector. Its proximity fuse triggered at 19 meters. The detonation shredded the missile's rear section and destabilized its flight path. Instead of a direct impact on the Ford's flight deck, the programmed aim point, the Khalij Fars struck the carrier's island superstructure at 9:15 p.m., 11 seconds after the second SM-6 detonated. The warhead was a 650-kilogram penetrating type. It punched through 4 levels of the island before detonating. The blast killed 27 sailors instantly. It destroyed the primary flight deck control station, the tower's communication suite, and the ship's aviation fuel management system. Fire broke out on 3 levels simultaneously. The Ford's damage control teams activated within 90 seconds. Her propulsion was unaffected. Her Aegis system was unaffected. She could still fight, but she could not conduct flight operations. The most powerful carrier strike group in the world had just lost its ability to fly aircraft. What's your assessment? Type A if you believe the SM-6 interception failure, 2 missiles, 1 near-miss each, reveals a fundamental gap in Aegis capability against hypersonic anti-ship ballistic missiles. Type C if you believe the near misses demonstrate the system performed close to its design limits, and the real failure was the intelligence gap that allowed Iran to develop and deploy the Khalij Fars undetected. Drop your full tactical analysis in the comments. The decision cycle in Washington ran faster than any previous Gulf crisis. The Ford strike had not been an ambiguous event requiring attribution analysis. The launch point, a mobile Khalij Fars battery that had repositioned to a coastal site on Qeshm Island 72 hours before the attack, had been tracked from the moment it lit its fire control radar. Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy communications intercepts had suggested an elevated operational tempo for 9 days. The intelligence picture had been read as posturing, not imminent action. That reading was wrong, and the cost of that miscalculation was 27 names on a list that the president received at 1:22 p.m. Washington time, the same moment he signed the strike authorization. The authorization was not surgical, it was not a message. It was a campaign order. 96 Tomahawk Block 5 missiles launched from USS Florida and USS Georgia. 2 Ohio-class guided missile submarines that had been repositioned to the Gulf of Oman and the northern Arabian Sea 72 hours before the attack. A precautionary forward deployment that nobody in the press pool covering the Ford's routine operations had reported on. The submarines had been in position, loaded, and waiting. The Khalij Fars battery on Qeshm Island was the first target struck. Hit at 9:41 p.m., 26 minutes after impact on the Ford, by 8 Tomahawks arriving from 2 different bearings simultaneously. The secondary explosions from the battery's remaining missiles burned for 4 hours. But Qeshm Island was not the primary target set. It was the opening item on a list that ran to 43 entries. Subscribe and hit the bell. War at Sea analysis. This detailed runs every week. The 43 target package had been maintained and updated by U.S. Central Command's Joint Intelligence Center for 11 months. Every Iranian anti-ship missile battery within range of the Strait of Hormuz. Every Khalij Fars and Noor coastal defense battery on the Gulf Coast. Every IRGCN fast attack boat base. Every air defense radar system protecting those bases. Every logistics node supplying the coastal batteries. Fuel points, ammunition transfer stations, maintenance facilities. The package was not assembled in response to the Ford strike. It had been assembled in preparation for exactly this scenario, refined monthly, verified by satellite imagery, updated every 48 hours. The 26 minutes between the Ford's hit and the first Tomahawk launch were not a planning window. They were a transmission delay. The Tomahawk strikes ran in 3 sequential waves over 90 minutes. First wave, the air defense radar network covering Iran's Gulf Coast. 14 S-300 and Buckham-2 positions eliminated in 18 minutes, opening the airspace for the strike aircraft that would follow. Second wave, the coastal missile batteries. 22 confirmed Noor and Khalij Fars positions struck. 18 assessed destroyed or severely damaged. Third wave, the IRGCN naval bases at Bandar Abbas, Bushehr, and the Qeshm Island forward operating base. Pier infrastructure, fuel storage, and every vessel that had not gotten underway targeted simultaneously. The operational logic was deliberate and sequential. First, deny Iran the ability to defend its airspace. Second, destroy the weapons it had used and the weapons it still had. Third, eliminate the naval infrastructure that would allow it to conduct further operations in the Gulf. By 11:09 p.m., 55 minutes after the missile struck the Ford, the third wave of Tomahawks was already inbound to the IRGCN naval bases. The carrier strike group reorganized while the Tomahawks flew. USS Dwight D. Eisenhower, operating 440 kilometers southeast in the Arabian Sea, beyond the range of any remaining Iranian anti-ship missile system after the Tomahawk strikes, turned northwest at 28 knots. Her air wing was armed and cycled to the flight deck in 2 hours and 14 minutes. FA-18E and FA-18F Super Hornets loaded with AGM-84, Harpoon anti-ship missiles, and AGM-154 joint standoff weapons began launching at 11:31 p.m. Their targets: the IRGCN surface combatants that had sortied from Bandar Abbas and Bushehr after the Ford strike, 19 fast attack craft, 7 PACAP missile boats, and the frigate Iran's Sahand, which had cleared the harbor before the Tomahawks arrived and was now running southeast at maximum speed toward the Strait of Hormuz. The P-8 Poseidon aircraft that had been orbiting the Gulf since 6 p.m. maintained a complete surface picture of every Iranian vessel underway. The Eisenhower strike package arrived over the target area at 11:48 p.m. with a targeting package that had been updated 40 seconds before weapons release. The Sahand, a 1,500-ton frigate armed with C-802 anti-ship missiles and a twin 40mm gun mount, was engaged first. 2 Harpoon missiles launched from an FA-18 at 22 kilometers. The Sahand's crew fired 3 C-802s in response. 2 were intercepted by the escorting destroyer USS Gravely's C-RAM system. 1 hit the FA-18's wingman, an FA-18F carrying a 2-person crew, in the aft fuselage. The aircraft was severely damaged but controllable. The crew flew it 340 kilometers back to the Eisenhower and made an emergency arrested landing. The Sahand took both harpoons amidships and stopped dead in the water, burning. She sank at 1:17 a.m. What would you have ordered as the Eisenhower's Air Wing commander when the report came in that one of your aircraft had been hit by an Iranian C-802, with 18 more Iranian vessels still active in the Gulf and an unknown number of Iranian submarines unaccounted for in the Strait of Hormuz? Pull the strike package back until the submarine picture is clearer? Continue the engagement and accept additional aircraft risk? Or redirect the remaining aircraft to the submarine hunt and deal with the surface vessels later? Leave your decision in the comments. The submarine dimension was the element that shaped every subsequent operational decision for the next 11 days. Iran operates 3 Kilo-class diesel-electric submarines. Vessels purchased from Russia in the 1990s, modernized with improved sonar and torpedo systems, capable of operating submerged on battery power for extended periods in the shallow, thermally layered waters of the Gulf and Gulf of Oman. In shallow water, with a thermocline above them and the acoustic chaos of the world's busiest oil shipping lane around them, Kilo submarines are extraordinarily difficult to find. They had been tracked by U.S. Navy P-8s in USS Hartford, a Los Angeles-class fast attack submarine pre-positioned in the Gulf of Oman prior to the Ford strike. When the Ford was hit, 2 of the 3 Kilos were in known positions. The third had transited south through the Strait of Hormuz 12 hours before the attack and disappeared into the deeper water of the Arabian Sea. That one missing submarine shut down the Strait of Hormuz as effectively as any minefield. Commercial tanker traffic, 21 million barrels of oil per day, 21% of global petroleum consumption, halted within 3 hours of the Ford strike as shipping companies received the Maritime Exclusion Zone notification issued by U.S. Fifth Fleet. The oil market opened in Asia with a 31% price spike. Every economy in the world that runs on petroleum felt the 9 seconds it took a Khalij Fars missile to cover its final descent. The search for the missing Kilo consumed 4 P-8 Poseidons flying continuous barrier patrols, USS Hartford running active prosecution tracks in the northern Arabian Sea, and an MH-60R helicopter squadron deploying sonobuoy patterns from the Eisenhower's deck. The Kilo was found 11 days later, running at 120 meters depth, nearly out of battery, attempting to transit back through the Strait of Hormuz toward Bandar Abbas. USS Hartford made the detection at 3,800 meters and tracked it for 6 hours before the commander received authorization to surface the vessel by torpedo warning. The Kilo surfaced. The crew was transferred to an Iranian Coast Guard vessel under a ceasefire arrangement negotiated 3 days earlier. The submarine was escorted to Bandar Abbas under U.S. Navy observation. The strait reopened to commercial traffic the same afternoon. 11 days, 1 missing submarine, 1 closed strait, 1% of global daily GDP temporarily disrupted by a vessel built in the 1990s, running on battery power and evasion skills. The damage aboard USS Gerald R. Ford required 47 days of repair at a forward maintenance facility before she could resume flight operations. 27 sailors killed, 49 wounded. The island's superstructure was rebuilt using prefabricated modules flown forward from the Puget Sound Naval Shipyard. The aviation fuel management system was replaced in 16 days, a record for that class of repair. The Ford returned to operational status at reduced capacity on day 47 and was at full flight operations capability on day 61. She returned to the Gulf on day 93. The flag she flew when she returned was the same flag that had been flying from her mast when the Khalij Fars hit. Her crew had kept it. It was the only thing on the island that had not been destroyed or replaced. The geopolitical aftermath compressed an enormous amount of strategic consequence into a short window. Iran's coastal missile network had been functionally eliminated in 90 minutes of Tomahawk strikes. Its Gulf surface fleet had been reduced by 73% in the Eisenhower's air wing engagement. Its 3 Kilo submarines were either destroyed, damaged, or under escort. The IRGCN's capacity to threaten Gulf shipping had been set back by an estimated 4 to 7 years, accounting for the time required to rebuild bases, replace vessels, reconstitute crews, and restock coastal missile batteries under the tightened sanctions regime that the UN Security Council voted through, with only Russia and China abstaining 10 days after the Ford strike. The cost of that strategic setback to Iran was paid in infrastructure, equipment, and prestige. The cost to the United States was paid in 27 names, 47 days of reduced carrier capability, and 11 days of closed strait that spiked global oil prices and disrupted supply chains from Rotterdam to Yokohama. Neither cost is acceptable. Both were paid. This is the arithmetic of decisions made at the level of nation-states, where the consequences of miscalculation are not measured in meetings canceled or budgets revised, but in ships burning and sailors who do not come home. The Khalij Fars battery commander who fired the launch order on a Sunday evening did not believe he was starting a war. He believed he was executing a carefully calibrated escalation, a strike damaging enough to demonstrate capability and resolve, contained enough to allow de-escalation on terms favorable to Iran. He was wrong about the second part. The 27 names made de-escalation impossible before retaliation. The 43 target package had already been built. The submarines were already in position. The decision was not made in the 90 seconds between launch detection and impact. It had been made over 11 months of targeting work and pre-positioned assets. The Khalij Fars battery commander pulled the trigger on a machine that had been cocked for nearly a year. The Persian Gulf is not a space for controlled escalation. It is a space where the threshold between probe and war is thinner than any planner on either side has ever successfully modeled. The Ford's damaged island, the 27 names, and 11 days of closed strait are the proof. Every naval commander operating in those waters carries that proof in their operational planning now. The threshold is real, it is lower than believed, and it does not reset. Was the Ford strike a catastrophic Iranian strategic miscalculation, or a rational escalation that simply encountered a U.S. response architecture more pre-positioned and more lethal than Iranian intelligence had assessed? What does a missing kilo submarine closing a global oil choke point for 11 days tell us about the asymmetric leverage that small, quiet submarine forces retain against the most powerful naval alliance in history? And does the Ford's 61-day return to full operations, faster than anyone anticipated, strengthen or weaken deterrence against future anti-ship ballistic missile strikes on U.S. capital ships? If this level of naval warfare analysis is what you come here for, like the video, subscribe, and leave your tactical read on the Ford strike in the comments. The next scenario is already being built. There is one number from the Ford strike that does not appear in damage reports or casualty lists, but that defines the operational meaning of everything that followed. It is the number of minutes between the Khalij Fars impact at 9:15 p.m. and the first Tomahawk striking the Qeshm Island battery at 9:41 p.m., 26 minutes. That is the response time of a pre-positioned, pre-authorized, preloaded strike architecture operating against a target set it had been refining for 11 months. 26 minutes from a burning carrier island to a missile battery turned to slag. Every Iranian military planner, every Russian analyst, every Chinese strategist watching that timeline absorbed the same lesson. The response machine does not need to be built after the provocation. It is already built. It is already aimed. The provocation does not start the clock. It releases it. 26 minutes is not a reaction time. It is a warning, and the warning is permanent. The Ford's flag came home. The 27 names did not. That asymmetry is the final accounting of a Sunday evening in the Persian Gulf. And the reason no flag, no repair, and no 61-day return to operations fully closes the ledger that the Khalij Fars opened at 9:15 p.m. The Persian Gulf keeps its own accounting. It recorded 26 minutes, 27 names, 11 days, and 61 days. Every one of those numbers is a lesson. Every lesson costs something that cannot be refunded.